want to know what would happen if Sanji's chivalry was turned into chivalry. How does Sanji get through One Piece if he cannot kick men? I can tell you right now that this is going to be a wild journey because this is not a simple character change. So much of what Sanji is his core beliefs regarding women. And you know, there's actually several points in One Piece where Sanji faces life or death situations that all hinge on a pervert gag. But for this video, we have two simple rules. The first is that Sanji's characteristics are going to be flipped, meaning that not only can he not fight men, but he also simps over men in the same way that he normally does with women. However, rule number two is that there is going to be no romance, because that's Oda's rule for writing the One Piece universe. He can simp all he wants, but just as always, it's not gonna get him anywhere. And how we make this shift is fairly simple, because Sanji's chivalry is a two-part formula. One core tenet of Sanji's belief stems from the fact that as a child, the only people in the world who were kind to him were women. So what we do right is we flip that. Vinsmoke Sora is now the maniacal dictator of the Gemma Kingdom, with Vinsmoke Judge being the kind, loving parent who sadly passed away. Reiju is the heartless sibling, whilst Ichiji, Niji, and the other one are all very empathetic and nurturing. I'm not going to try and justify it too deeply beyond that. We just require a semi-logical premise to get things going. But with one final requirement being that we need to gender swap Zeph. In this timeline, Zeph is going to encounter Emporio Ivankov, complications arise, ensue, and now Zeph has breasts. Say hello to Red Breast Zeph, which I think is a much more appropriate rebranding because Zeph is about to lose her leg. And so Sanji's childhood happens as follows. He is imprisoned by his mother for being not an evil prick, then released into the wild by his ever so kind brothers, gets a job on a cruise ship, loses his job and takes up a career of starving on a rock, which doesn't go well. So he and Zeph found Baratier together, with Red Breast Zeph then training Sanji in the art of kick fighting. And this right here, this is part 2. Zeph was the one who taught Sanji that a man can't kick a woman. And Zeph has changed her tune now that she is a woman, so we don't have that to worry about. But at some stage, Sanji is going to develop his chivalry, taking a vow to never kick a man. Cut to the iconic introduction of Sanji on Baratier. Here we have Full Body trying to impress his lady friend, whose name is Moody, who for some reason we see in a bikini in One Piece Stampede. So here's the thing. Full Body is completely talking out of his ass here. He's appraising the wine and determining its region of origin, and in the original, Sanji bluntly states that he's dead wrong and embarrasses Full Body. But not here. Here, instead of that, Sanji is going to swoon and yell assorted Full Body chwans, and the meal will actually go very well for Full Body. Perhaps he and Moody may even have a second, third, or even fourth date, and then bam, look, now they're married. Maybe, I don't know. I also don't care. What I care about is Sanji, and what Sanji cares about is men. And that's why when Luffy initially asked Sanji to join the crew, he's going to accept immediately. Because yes, Sanji has a debt to Zeph, and we'll settle that in a bit, but in this world, Sanji is a Luffy simp on Boa Hancock levels. He will do whatever Luffy asks. And you know what? Even if Sanji was on the fence, as soon as he sees Zoro sitting in the restaurant, he's done. But as an important distinction of relationship, Zoro and Sanji are going to be much more friendly in this world. Sanji will simp, and Zoro will tolerate said simpage. So Nami's going to betray the crew, to which Sanji isn't surprised. But then Don Krieg launches his assault on Baratier. And this is a problem because Sanji is incapable of fighting anyone in Don Krieg's crew, because his crew is the biggest pirate sausage party in all of East Blue. But thankfully, Sanji never beats Pearl or Gin in the actual series either, so he's just going to take a bit more of a beating than usual. Whatever the case, we will have defended Baratier, Sanji thanks Zeph, and we move on to Arlong Park, which does have some pretty fun moments. For example, at one stage, Zoro calls Nami an evil witch woman, and Sanji, in this case, is going to agree, thus in deepening their bond. In the actual series, this is where their rivalry started, but in our series, it's where their friendship starts. Nojiko offers to tell the crew Nami's backstory, but in a bit of a weird situation, no one really cares. Luffy wanders off, Zoro goes to sleep, Sanji's not interested in hearing a story about a woman told by a woman, so it's really just Usopp who's invested here. But Sanji is determined to follow Luffy, so we're gonna go and save Nami anyway. Which is problematic as once again, Sanji is literally incapable of fighting anyone in the Arlong Pirates. Knowing this, he'll probably volunteer to help Luffy instead of Usopp, and honestly, he'll do the thing that he should have done in the actual series, which is just kick Luffy out of the stone, much like how Sanji demolished the giant stone slab thrown at him a page earlier. It's a slightly complicated interaction, because Sanji volunteers to fight Kurubi, Usopp grabs Luffy, then accidentally lets Luffy go, that hits Chu, Usopp's fighting Chu now, but none of that is is going to happen this time around. It's going to be much more streamlined. And with Luffy free, he'll probably be the one to beat Karubi as Arlong watches passively from his fish chair. Inevitably though, they're all beaten, Nami joins the crew, and then this is our next big twist. The dynamic of Sanji and Nami is going to mirror the regular series dynamic of Sanji and Zoro. Sanji and Nami are both highly emotionally charged individuals who are going to be furious with each other most of the time. And at this point, we've really yet to experience true full force Sanji. But don't worry, his moment is coming. During Alabasta, that is, because even regular Sanji doesn't do too much before then. He's asleep for Whiskey Peak, he wanders off during Little Garden, and he's mostly unconscious for Drum Island. You could maybe make the argument that he wouldn't fall asleep during Whiskey Peak because that was due to him being slathered in women, but Baroque Works is gonna do whatever it takes. Instead of flirting with 20 women, it's gonna be 20 men and we'll have the same outcome. In any case, we're skipping to the Civil War in Alabasta. So originally when the Straw Hats split up, Sanji ended up in a group with Chopper facing off against Mr. Four and Miss Merry Christmas, which is very fortunate because Sanji can defeat her quite easily, and without Miss Merry Christmas, Mr. Four is useless. We don't even have to beat him, we could just leave him alone if we wanted. Doesn't matter, he's irrelevant now. Some big old ducks then inform Sanji that Usopp is in trouble, which then sets off the chain of events that take Sanji to Bon Clay. Luckily though, since we've already dealt with Mr. Four and Miss Merry Christmas, Chopper and Usopp are now here, so it's 3-on-1. And should Bon Clay transform into Nami, then Sanji will waste no time taking this opportunity to strike and defeat him. Everything else falls into place, Crocodile falls from the sky, and Alabasta is cleared, with Sanji for the first time really getting to prove his worth. Jaya mostly passes without incident, and things only get real problematic during Skypiea. Quite specifically, the Ordeal of Balls, which is a fantastic alternate title for this video, and due to Satori having balls, Sanji cannot fight him. A workaround here would be that Sanji captures Satori while Luffy finishes him off, just reversing what happens in the actual series. Other than that, pretty smooth sailing during Skypiea. Now during Long Ring Longland, Zoro and Sanji had a bit of a rough time in the groggy ring, but not on this occasion, because Sanji is going to willingly become the Ball Man. And you know what, there's a definite ball theme happening with Sanji even without this video. But these two will decimate their opponents with perfect teamwork right from the get-go. Remembering that this is a game, and so Sanji doesn't have to fight his opponents, they'll find a way around it. Then on Water 7, Sanji, infuriated by the Frankie family beating up Usopp because how dare a man be harmed, he will then attack the Frankie family, but because Mozu and Kiwi aren't there, Sanji is mostly useless again. Sanji then follows Robin onto the train. Nothing he can really do there either though. He can't beat Wanzi, he can't even beat Jerry, and in fact all of the cars are just packed with men. Curses, foiled again by his one extraordinarily common weakness. On the bright side, his Any Sloppy matchup goes very well, thoroughly defeating Caliphate, which does leave Jabra, but he's not all that important to deal with. Kaku's key is the one we need, so all that matters is that he goes down. So we're going to rescue Robin and move on. Thriller Bark is an interesting ordeal. Sanji won't be able to save Nami from Absalom, and therefore Nami and Absalom will be officially married under local Thriller Bark law. This, I also want to point out, is the first of 2 Nami wedding scenarios in this video. But in the end, Absalom isn't going to be a huge X factor, and someone else will deal with him, and if anything, Sanji can go and defeat Perona. As for Sabati Archipelago, no notes, it's perfect, it all just happens as is, which is rather tragically, and Sanji gets sent by Kuma to Momoiro Island. And so Sanji ends up on an island exclusively populated by men. This is his paradise, genuinely his equivalent of Amazon Lily. Sanji might even willingly put on the dress, however, it will shortly be transformed into hell. For the next 2 years, Sanji has to defeat the 99 masters of Newcomer Kenpo for the 99 attack cuisine recipes. And knowing Sanji's bias, Ivankov will use his powers and the Newcomer masters will take female bodies. So Sanji will be traumatized by women once more. Cut past the time skip, and after not seeing any men for 2 years, Sanji's nosebleeds are particularly problematic, and his time at the Mermaid Cafe is spent largely unenjoyed. No killer nosebleeds, but also being surrounded by women after escaping an island full of women isn't exactly his idea of a good time. He's kind of useless again during Fishman Island, but it's fine. Even if Sanji can't help beat Wadatsumi, it's Wadatsumi, and none of the Straw Hats are particularly pushed during this arc. Easy dub. But that's going to be the last time in this video that anything is going to go according to plan, because I now present the most critical arc for our Sanji, Punk Hazard. During this arc, Sanji gets put into Nami's body, and this is hilarious because this is his absolute nightmare. It would be like this world's equivalent of if the body swap happened with Zoro. Sanji is now deeply entrenched in the soft, weak, and very annoying vessel of his crew rival, but here's the thing. There is a very real chance that Sanji dies on Punk Hazard. Let me explain. again. In chapter 677, Sanji, still in Nami's body, is struggling to run away from Caesar's Shinokuni chemical weapon. Nami's body just does not allow him to keep going until he gropes Nami's breast and starts sprinting ahead. This is played for comedy, but this could genuinely be the end for him. In this world, he doesn't have that pervert power source, and so he may fall behind. Brook, Zoro, and Kinemon are also there, but they can't help him because they're also desperately trying to save their own lives. Even after adopting Brook's running strategy, none of them can carry Sanji and be fast enough to outrun the Shinokuni gas. So Sanji Nami falls behind, gets caught by the gas, paralyzed, and petrified. But he's not dead. Yet. So this gas, the Shinokuni, it's a painfully vague substance. It's about as close to a deadly chemical weapon as Eiichiro Oda is willing to go in our fun pirate adventure. But before we get to Sanji's fate, this has a nasty series of domino effects to deal with. During the final conflict, Tashigi and many of the G5 Marines are going to be killed by Virgo because Sanji isn't there to save them. And Virgo's mission was to assassinate the G5 Marines and report their deaths as an accident. This is particularly devastating because this section contains the G5 medical team that Sanji leads to the children going berserk. But with no Sanji and no medical team, there's a very real possibility that Mokka dies after consuming all of the candies that were laced with the NCH-10, aka the energy steroids. Child death, very tragic. But let's get back to Sanji's fate with the Shinokuni. The effects of this weapon can be treated if the victim is broken out of the shell within half a day, and we can safely assume that Sanji Nami would be. However, the actual poison was not able to be treated on Punk Hazard, even after they tortured Caesar into telling them how to treat it. So even if he has that knowledge, Chopper does not have the resources to cure Sanji. And the only reason why the G5 Marines survived is because they were picked up and treated in time by the Marine doctors. The only way Sanji survives is if he gets treated by the Marines. However, Luffy, by this point, has also made an alliance with Trafalgar Law that he needs to honor, and they need to move onwards to Dressrosa and just generally away from Punk Hazard before the reinforcing Marines arrive. So the crew split up pre-Dressrosa. Sanji, in Nami's body, is going to turn himself into the Marines in order to be cured, making a promise that, yeah, I'll meet up with you guys later, whilst the rest of the crew with Trafalgar Law move on to Dressrosa. The reason why Nami can't go with Sanji or be swapped back into her own body is because they need her to navigate in the new world. The Thousand Sunny does not sail without Nami. Now, the main problem this causes with Dressrosa is that the crew don't meet Viola, which means that Zoro is the one who saves the Thousand Sunny from Doflamingo's attack, as he was informed of Jola's assault by Wicker. So in the actual arc, Zoro runs back to the Sunny, but he runs into Sanji, and they decide that Sanji heads back. But in this case, Zoro ends up aboard the Thousand Sunny, with Brook, Chopper, Momonosuke, Caesar, and Nami in Sanji's body. After which point, the Big Mom Pirates attack, and the Sunny has to move on to Zo with Zoro in command. This does create a slight issue of who's going to defeat Pika, but not a big enough issue to stop the downfall of Doflamingo. Mostly because Law serves as a pretty hard counter to Pika should the need arise. But Zo and Whole Cake Island, this is where things get particularly insane. Whilst on Zo, Capone Gang Beige will arrive to effectively blackmail Sanji. However, the person he encounters is Nami in Sanji's body. And despite any objections, Beige is here to complete a mission. And so he will successfully abduct Nami Sanji, taking her to Whole Cake Island, and essentially Nami is now engaged to Charlotte Pudding. So this is now Nami's second non-consensual wedding. Meanwhile, actual Sanji has been treated and cured by this point, and Smoker has probably acquiesced and just turned the other way, allowing Sanji to escape. So he'll be on his way to Zo, assuming that Law gave him a piece of Beppo's Vivia card, but it's gonna take him a while. He may even arrive there after the Dressrosa team, and I don't think that Sanji will be returning to the crew anytime soon. And without a navigator, the Straw Hats can't actually use the Thousand Sunny to go after Nami Sanji, and having already said goodbye to the Barto Club, this means that we need to borrow a navigator, and that is probably Beppo, the navigator of the Heart Pirates, and someone who has a genuine tragic connection to Whole Cake Island through his brother Zeppo. So the Sanji retrieval team is now the Nami retrieval team, and it consists of Luffy, Chopper, Brook, Pedro, Beppo, and Carrot will of course stow away, as everyone else proceeds on to Wano. And amazingly, despite how much of an absolute shit show this has become, Whole Cake Island turns out to be a very simple affair. Luffy finds Nami Sanji, and they leave. That's it. Very possibly with the assistance of Sanji's three kind and empathetic brothers, Ichiji, Niji, and the other one. And also Jinbei goes along with them because why not? Unfortunately, this leads to the eradication of the Vinsmoke family, who were going to be killed even if the wedding was successful. The Fire Tank Pirates will try and fail to assassinate Big Mom, almost certainly perishing themselves, and due to only being mildly annoyed and full of delicious wedding cake, Big Mom will not pursue Luffy to Wano. But for us, it's straight on to Wano, but it should be noted that Luffy has not learned Future Sight, and that's bad. He's going into Wano even more underpowered than he already was. So we arrive on the island without a Sanji, but with a Jinbei. That's nice. And due to the time lag of Wano, you know, the whole needing to wait 2 weeks for the Fire Festival, because of that forced waiting period, Sanji will finally catch up and Law will swap Nami and Sanji's bodies back. However, due to Big Mom not chasing the crew, Kid and Killer are likely going to die in the Udon prison because Queen was drowning them and there is nothing that anyone else could have done about it. So that's sad, but hey, at least it saves Kid the embarrassment of the Shanks situation in the future. But it also means that we need to beat Queen right here and right now to proceed. But the thing is, Queen isn't even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is his plague tech. And in particular, it's Babanuki, the elephant smile user. In the series, Luffy uses Future Sight to stop Babanuki filling the prison with, quote, the concentrated power of 200 doses of plague. And as he thwarts it, Luffy even acknowledges that, I saw a pretty bad future just now. In this world, that bad future is gonna happen because Luffy doesn't have Future Sight, which means the prisoners won't rebel alongside them. They'll be used to infect Luffy and anyone else who came to rescue him. In fact, Luffy is going to infect himself by cuddling with all of the prisoners. And whilst Luffy probably could have beaten Queen if he remained in his standard state, this has removed any chance of that happening. Everyone here will be overwhelmed by the mummy plague. Queen will prevail. Luffy will die with a smile on his face. The rest of the Straw Hats will be wiped out in an attempted raid. Wano will remain in the clutches of Kaido. Joy Boy will never liberate the world, and we will fall into a brand new age of darkness overseen by Emu. And that's what would happen if Sanji was gay. Who would have thought that the entire Jenga tower that is One Piece was held together by this one grab of a breast?